All right, man, peace. So the unified world junior welterweight champion, Terence Crawford, he made an appearance with Stephen A. and Max Kellerman, and he touched on a lot of topics, not only his prediction for who he thought may win the Triple G versus Canelo bout, but also his aspirations for his move to welterweight, who he wants to fight, and how soon he'd like to fight them. So anyway, let's see what he has to say. Of course, I'm going to chime in.
Still undefeated at 32-0. Please welcome Terence Crawford to the show.
You see, it's so funny, these people, they say, you know what? It doesn't matter if you lose some fights, but what is the first thing that they say to fighters who have not lost? And still undefeated. Why is that? Because what does that mean? That means that you've beaten all your opponents. It means that you have transcended adversity in the middle of fights. That's what it means to be undefeated. But, you know, depending on who they're talking about and what agenda they're trying to push, they're either going to extol you being undefeated or they're going to try to diminish it. That's how you know that the angle on Floyd Mayweather is jealousy and envy. It is what it is.
And before we get into the big fight tomorrow night, you just had a huge win, knocking out the previously undefeated Julius Ndongo. How sweet was that victory for you?
Oh, it was real sweet. Making history again and again, and for the third time. But it was bittersweet. It was something that I set my sights on from 135 coming up to 140 and wanted to be the best at 140, and job well done.
Yes, it was a job well done. The brother has passed every test thus far. I remember watching his fight against that little Cuban fighter. I'm trying to remember his name. The left-handed, the southpaw. He put in work, especially after he was getting touched up early. Gamboa, that's the brother's name. He's fighting Gamboa. Gamboa was touching him up early. He adapted, he adjusted, and he won a great, very exciting fight, a slugfest. You know, he's been able to pass every test thus far. So now he's moving to 147. That's where a lot of the killers are. So we're going to learn a lot about Terence Crawford in the next year or so. We'll see.
Yeah, by the way, in case you guys need to know what you're looking at, this is a great fighter in his prime. Like when we talk about we talk about Marvin Hagler and Alexis Arguello and Pernell Whitaker and all these guys that become these legendary names. This is what it looks like when a great fighter is in his...
Look at that body shot. He touched him perfect right there. I know there was some guys saying, I don't think he really landed that blow. Like, well, these guys are comedians, man. That was a perfect shot right there to the liver. Very, very similar to the shot that Bernard Hopkins landed on De La Hoya to end their fight.
In his prime, Terence Crawford can fight southpaw, can fight right-handed, switch up in the middle, can box, punch. And I remember the first time we saw you on HBO, Terence, you beat up a guy called Greatest Prescott, a big puncher. And I remember thinking, oh, I like this kid. When you were beating him up every round, and then you hit him low. And when he turned to complain to the ref, you barked at him to stop, we'll call it, whining. And I thought, ooh, this kid is tough. There's a mean little sucker in there.
It's a mean little sucker. Terence should slap the shit out of him just for calling him that.
Is it important to you to be recognized as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world one day, maybe sooner than later?
Of course. I feel like I'm that right now. I strive to be the best in any...
You should feel like you are right now. I don't know if I will quite put you there quite yet, but you up there, you know. Ward is number one. And then, you know, in that 2 to 5 area, you have yourself, you have Canelo, you know, a couple other guys. You know, Rigondeaux, he deserves honorable mention. You know, quite a few guys. Keith Thurman.
Anything I do, I'm competitive in anything I do. So why not strive to be the number one pound-for-pound boxer in the world, which I think I'm already close to being.
And you told that to Andre Ward after your last fight.
Right.
Yep, and I noted that. You see how competitive these guys are. He didn't give two shits. Andre Ward is his homeboy, too. And he told him while he was right there. He said, I think I got you now.
Right. I told him, I said, after that fight, I think I got you. It can go up and down, but if not, then soon to be.
You got to move to welterweight. If you want a title at welterweight, I might have to give you the slight edge over Ward. If you can go to welterweight and beat Keith Thurman, I might put him above Ward. We'll see what happens. Ward still has to, if Ward can unify all the titles like Terence Crawford did at 140, then he'll keep that title of number one pound for pound. But if Terence Crawford moves up to 147 and he beats Keith Thurman, but a lot of it also depends on what happens tonight. You got Triple G and you got Canelo. If Canelo beats Triple G, Canelo will have a stake at that number one pound for pound title.
Well, when you talk about being the best pound for pound fighter in the world, who do you think is standing in your way from claiming that title? Is it an Andre Ward in terms of...
Didn't he just say that? Were you listening, Stephen A? He just was talking about Andre Ward, man.
In terms of being recognized as the best pound for pound, is he the only guy, or are there a couple of other names that you think are standing in your way from claiming that crown?
Well, I think he's the number one guy in the world right now. But you can arguably say, oh, well, Lomachenko, he got the skills to be number one. But
yes, that's why I would give him honorable mention as well. He has the skills, he just don't have the resume.
But with the fights that he have, he don't really have it. But
right, he don't have the resume.
But you can say, oh, well, Gennady Golovkin if he beats Canelo or vice versa. But me personally, I just feel like Terence Crawford and Andre Ward is the number one and number two.
And also watch for HBO. They're going to start to try to push a Japanese fighter named Inoue, who they just had fighting last weekend. They're going to start pushing him as number one pound for pound. That's what they do. They like to take these little fighters, these little tiny guys from overseas, and start talking about them like they're the greatest thing ever. That's what they did with Chocolatito, a guy who basically was just a backyard brawler. And they had him number one pound for pound. As soon as that guy faced somebody who could box, he was getting knocked the fuck out left and right.
So much talk about how the rest of the world has caught up to the United States in boxing. But when you look at the best pound for pound, Andre Ward, according to most based on accomplishment, and you're coming for the spot, as is Lomachenko, he's Ukrainian. But two of the best three are American, it looks like, right?
Yeah, and you can also throw Keith Thurman and Errol Spence in there. Errol Spence is shooting up with a bullet.
Right now. Is that important to you at all to like rep American boxing?
It's always important being where you from. You don't want nobody from a different country coming over here and taking what's yours in your own country on your own turf. We can't go over there and be what they is over here.
Right. Well, that's also because over there they have a much stronger sense of cultural affinity than over here. This society is Babylonian. So it's very easy in America for them to want to hype foreign fighters over their own indigenous fighters. And I use that word indigenous for a reason, because the so-called black man is indigenous to America. All right. So it's very easy for them to take a Manny Pacquiao or a Lomachenko and want to exalt them over an indigenous or aboriginal fighter, because, they do whatever they can to try to demean the so-called black man. And yes, once again, the so-called blacks that are in the Americas are a mix of three separate populations. The indigenous or aboriginal blacks of the Americas, the so-called blacks who came here from Europe after the fall of the black rulership in the 1600s and 1700s, as well as the blacks who were sent here from the west coast of Africa, both after the Islamic and the Old Testament Hebrew blacks were kicked out of Spain and Portugal in 1492 and 1494, respectively. They were shipped to the Portuguese and Spanish holdings on the west coast of Africa to be shipped over here, as well as the blacks on the west coast of Africa, so-called blacks from Ouida or Judah, Benin, right, what they call the Slave Coast or the Gold Coast, right? Those are the three populations that comprise the people that you call today the so-called blacks of the Americas, okay? For people who might be confused, I remember I had some simpleton who got upset in one of my previous videos. I think it was one of the Michael Bennett videos. This is why black people are so confused, because, some of us say that we Moors, some of us say that we from Europe, some of us say we from Africa. Nobody know what they talking about. No, you just a simpleton, all right? Our people, the whole earth is our turf, okay? We're the only ones with all of the original quote-unquote DNA. Our people are the only ones. But that's another issue for another day. All right, that's another issue for another video.
So why.
You won the title traveling.
I won the title traveling, but they wasn't cheering for me to beat Ricky Burns like people in the United States cheer for Lomachenko to beat people from the United States.
Of course, because the black man is a pilgrim. All right? And that's that's pursuant to prophecy. Our people are pilgrims. So everywhere we go, we're people without a home. All right? Until the times have been fulfilled. It is what it is. It's just, this is why I tell cats, this is prison. It's not a place for you to get comfortable. There's a place for you to just survive. And really, if cats really wanted to be comfortable here, you would have a ruling class mentality, and you'd want the rulership. You'd want your own government. You'd want your own land. You want your own army. All right. That's proof that deep down, even though a lot of pro-blacks rant and rave about not being docile, you really don't. You really do want to just sit here as a visitor, because your mindset is that you want equality. If you really wanted to rule, you want to have the authority. You want to overthrow. And most of you cats who talk all that smiggity smack, you really don't want that. You're just talking.
Even out on the Gucci red, white, and blue. Come on. We know.
Of course.
We know you're about the USA.
By the way, this is.
Did this broad just say the Gucci red, white, and blue? Look, I'm sorry. I'm not too much for the fancy name brands, but if I remember correctly, isn't Gucci red, black, and green? Let me rewind this shit.
Here for Lomachenko to beat people from the United States.
And you even have on the Gucci red, white, and blue. Come on. We know.
Of course.
What is this dizzy bitch talking about?
We know you're about the USA.
By the way, this is just a couple stories about Terence quickly. When he was a young fighter fighting on ESPN, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, got shot in the head, drove himself to the hospital, drove himself to the emergency room, and speaking of the shirt that he's wearing, went on a trip to Africa, and literally, when someone says they'll give you the shirt off your back, gave someone the shirt off his back. Have you been back there since?
Yes.
Wow.
I've been back before, after that, and did a lot of missionary work, and it was surprisingly crazier the second time than it was the first time, being that I told everybody I was coming back, and they was just so happy for me to come back with tears in their eyes. Like, nobody really never come back when they said they was going to come back.
That's good for the brother. That means that he has a magnanimous spirit. Good for him.
And I met a lot of friends out there, made a lot of friends, and, it's humbling when you go out there and help out those type of people that's really in need for really help. And I'm going back again.
Toughness and heart, deadly combination.
I give Terence Crawford credit. Unlike a lot of the fake internet revolutionaries and pro-blacks who all over cyberspace, he actually did go back to Africa, and he's willing to go back. A lot of these niggas talk all this shit about the motherland, ain't never been there, or went there and then came back. How come you ain't stay there? since you so super... that's my question constantly. Instead of being in America and being frustrated, because we know most so-called pro-blacks, they don't believe in the scriptures. They'll say that the Bible is the white man's book. Okay, so then why you here? Trump is not stopping nobody from flying back to the motherland. All right? Go back there, find your indigenous tribe, scarify your face, scarify your back, which many of the indigenous African Hamitic tribes do, and live amongst your people there. All right? Put a big ass plate in your lip, and just stay there. Don't you know that one of those tribes in so-called Africa, they have a custom that they do where they will walk through the alimentary canal of an elephant. They'll walk starting in the asshole. They'll walk through the asshole all the way through the small intestine, large intestine, the stomach, up through the esophagus and out the elephant's mouth. A lot of you cats that claim to be so pro-Africa and pro-black, go over there and do that shit.
Yeah, he definitely has in the droves, no question. I need to get I'd be remiss in neglecting to get to tomorrow night's fight with one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. Question: who do you have winning this fight and why?
Well, I think Triple G edge him, being that he's a stronger puncher. His jab is more crispier, and he just gonna punch in the middle of Canelo combinations. I think Canelo gonna try to counter him and box him. But again, if Canelo can cut him up, he can lead itself to a victory.
That's the same thing I was saying. Look, I picked Triple G. I think that his punches will be more authoritative, especially his jab. But you never know, man. Canelo may be able to outbox him, may hurt him to the body. We'll see. It depends on Canelo's commitment to his game plan for the fight. We'll see.
They say that Canelo is a better boxer than Triple G right now. How much of a discrepancy, a divide do you think exists between the skill level? Because I remember, listen, like, you'll be the first to tell anybody, yeah, you can box. You're saying it ain't just about power, you can box. Canelo, how much of a better boxer is he than Triple G in your mind?
He's not a too far off better boxer, because a lot of people don't give Triple G credit when the credit's due. He cuts the ring off well. He times his opponents well. He goes to the head and the body. He uses jab. He uses distance. So that's going to play in a big factor in the fight.
Triple G has almost 500 fights, maybe over 500 fights of experience. Okay? Canelo has done a lot of learning on the job in professional boxing. He is what you call a wonderkin, meaning he's a natural. A lot of his movements, very smooth. He's the type of guy who can learn just from watching videos and going in the gym and drilling. But you cannot replace experience. Gennady has a phenomenal amount of experience that he's going to apply. So we'll see. To me, it's going to come down to punch resistance, as well as just the ability to commit to your game plan. But I already covered this in the prediction video.
Canelo uses jab too, but at times he tend to slow down in the later rounds. He tend to get hit with a couple of shots, so do Triple G. So we're going to see who got the best chin.
Hey, I said that a long time ago in videos that I did months ago, that it's going to come down to whoever has better punch resistance, because they both going to catch each other flush a few times in this fight.
In the fight.
Yeah, you don't get to be a dominant international amateur fighter like Triple G did if you don't have some boxing skills, right? You are a guy, I've asked you, and you mentioned Lomachenko. You're a guy, game, recognize game, real, recognize real, right? And you follow all different kinds of sports. Terence will be in fighter meetings talking about Kobe Bryant or whatever else, or some football game. But this is a fight that has a chance to elevate boxing because of the style of the fighters. They're going to be scrapping. They're going to be going at it. It's too...
Allegedly, presumably. You have no idea how they're going to be fighting. That's how you guys are hyping it. Because at the end of the day, the boxing pay-per-views have severely fallen off. I'll predict probably somewhere around 800,000 buys for this fight, which would be huge compared to how the pay-per-views have really fallen off since the Mayweather era.
Tough guys, right? And I'm thinking about Corrales Castillo, best fight I ever saw. I saw James Toney in the audience, great fighter, going crazy. Like, this is what I'm talking about. As a fighter, do you look at this fight and think, this is what I'm talking about?
So me personally, I never look at fights like that, because you never know. Just like everybody thought the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight was going to be Hagler-Hearns. They thought Terence Crawford, Julius Ndongo fight was going to be one of the toughest fights of my career. And it was really one of the easiest fights of my career. So you really never know until you get in there and one fighter opposes will on the other fighter.
Absolutely. And that's why I stated I don't see Canelo Alvarez coming in there and getting in a war with Golovkin unless he's forced to, unless Golovkin puts so much pressure on him that he's forced to. Canelo is not that type of fighter. He talks all that Mexican-style shit, but he's not a Mexican-style fighter. He fights a lot like the so-called Black American style. Shiftiness, movement, rolling punches, shoulder rolling, counter punching, jabbing, sidestepping when he can until he gets tired.
We've got two more good fights on ESPN this weekend in Arizona, featuring undefeated WA world champions, Oscar Valdez and Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, right? Tickets are on sale now. Are you looking forward to seeing those fights?
Of course. Ramirez is a good guy. He's fighting one of my good friends, and it's going to be a good fight. He's very strong. He punches real hard, but again, he's open for some shots that be landed on, and it's going to make for a great fight.
Real quick, who do you want, Terence? Out of everybody out there, you're going to move up to welterweight. Who do you want? We talked about Errol Spence and Terence Crawford is eventually the big fight. Who do you want at welterweight?
See, me personally, I always believe in to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Spence is not the man at 147.
Shots fired. But he is correct. Errol Spence is not the man. He's just the biggest prospect. He's just the best prospect. I mean, he's what you view as the stock that's on the rise. But he's right. Right now, the man at welterweight is Keith Thurman.
Who's the man?
Keith Thurman.
Based on resume.
Keith Thurman.
I don't know about that.
Look at how Terence looked at Stephen A. He said Keith Thurman. And he looked at him like, nigga, you better fall back right now before I slap them glasses off your face.
I don't know about that, Terrence. I really don't.
No, Terence right based on resume, but what we're talking about is the eyeball
I'm
test.
talking about the eyeball
The
test.
eyeball.
I'll say this. I think that Errol Spence, that victory over Kell Brook in Britain was more impressive than either one of Keith's victories against Sean Porter or Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia does not even want to fight Errol Spence. Errol Spence has called him out. Danny Garcia does not even want to fight him right now. Errol Spence, you get in the ring with Errol Spence, you're going to leave with something broken. Ribs, jaw, or eye socket. Something's going to be broken when you fight that dude. All right? So, I mean, guys are ducking him right now, and he has a belt. So, I'm looking forward to his fight against Thurman. I believe that Errol Spence will beat Thurman. And I believe that he's going to hurt Thurman, especially to the body. But Keith has dynamic power as well, especially early in the fight. So, as I've stated, I'm looking forward to that fight sometime early in 2018, maybe around April or May. And then maybe a unification bout between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford sometime in late 2018. We'll see. Remember, right now, Keith has 2 belts. Errol has 1. And Jeff Horn has 1. So I'm assuming that Bud Crawford will have to get his belt through Jeff Horn or whoever Jeff Horn loses to. I'm assuming that Errol Spence will probably fight Keith Thurman early next year. They're both under the Al Heyman stable. And then Al Heyman and Bob Arum will have to work out a deal for Errol Spence and Terence Crawford to fight late next year. We'll see.
I mean, I understand he's a champion. I understand he's got more fights. But look, when I see Keith Thurman, I see very, very good. When I see Errol Spence Jr., I see special.
Yeah, I do too.
The eye test can lie to you.
The eye test can lie to me?
It can lie to you.
That's almost blasphemous.
It can lie to you.
That's almost blasphemous.
Well, Terrence,
Errol Spence might be watching.
you saying that about Errol Spence just going to stoke that fight now.
That's okay.
He's good
What?
with it. To be
That's
the
okay.
man, you got to beat the man. You
Listen.
heard him.
Are you what?
Keith Thurman is the man at 147. And to be the man, you got to beat the man. He's number 1 welterweight right now.
And you just don't see it with Errol Spence.
Hold on, man.
No, I see it, but he's not number 1.
Let me say something for the record. Keith Thurman fights Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence is going to beat him.
You don't know that.
I'm telling you what I'm saying. I'm saying he's going to beat him. And then he'll remember what you just said. Errol Spence will remember what you just said on national television, Terrence.
And then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stand up and say, let's get it on.
Go ahead, Terrence. Talk your shit, man. Look at how he stared down Stephen A.'s stupid ass. Let me rewind that.
Errol Spence will remember what you just said on national television, Terrence.
And then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stand up and say, let's get it on.
Let me tell you what he's just looking to beat the best. He's just looking to beat the best.
That's very, very bold. That's very bold.
He dropped the mic. He dropped the mic.
Stephen A. said that's very bold. Well, you know, they say fortune favors the bold.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to Tom. Appreciate you paying it forward in Africa as well. Special heart right there.
Wow.
Congratulations to Terence Crawford. That was a very good interview. Hopefully he backs up what he says. It's easy to talk about that dog as long as it's on the other side of the fence. Right now, as we all know, Terence Crawford is under the Bob Arum stable. Keith Thurman and Errol Spence are under the Al Heyman stable. So he's going to have to get over that fence in order to make those fights and back up his talk. We'll see. I hope that it happens. Anyway, peace.